Yes, hello.
Hi, Maria. Carlo here.
Hello, Carlo. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
You?
great. Much better than last time.
Mm-hmm.
So, Maria, I'm calling back just to record a little bit, 2 or 3 key points of the story, of your story, because we are going to use, as a key contribution in the documentary we are producing on what happened in Malta and why basically Daphne was killed.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that was loud enough. Yeah. It was? So let's give 3 big cheers to our gunner. Hip hip! Hey! Hip hip! Hey! Hip hip! Hey!
The assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia came as a shock, really. It is so violent, and it shows that freedom of speech is under attack, and it shows also an unbelievable level of arrogance.
The motive behind Daphne's execution, murder, probably lies in one of those articles she wrote, especially in the very recent past, where she was unraveling high-level government corruption. But I cannot exclude that it was about something she was about to write.
We are doing what we want. We are the powerful, we are the rich, and you, civil society, you, journalists, don't get mixed up in my affairs. This is how I feel the sense of this assassination.
Try to think of it as a dark cave. We're all digging in it, but she's further and further and further inside. In that darkness, she stepped on a live wire that blew her up.
In Malta, there is impunity. Impunity for money laundering, impunity for selling citizenships.
I was in Brussels, in my office, and someone sent me a message that there has been an explosion in Bidnia. Bidnia is a town where she used to live. Of course, the first thing I did is sent her a number of messages. And normally, even when she was busy with something, she used to tell me, not now, I'll call you later. But I couldn't get through. So I panicked, and then finally, after about 10 minutes or 15 minutes, it was confirmed to me that someone assassinated Daphne. And I think that was the worst time of my life. I couldn't do anything. I was away from her. I wasn't even in Malta. I just couldn't believe it.
I wouldn't ordinarily put up a post explaining my absence when I'm going to be away from this site. No, I haven't gone anywhere, though a holiday would be nice. I'm actually working. So as soon as that's done, I'll be back.
For me, Daphne was a friend who I've known for many years, almost 25 to 30 years.
To me, Daphne, first and foremost, was a woman, a mother, a wife, a brilliant journalist, and to me, one of the most influential people this country has ever produced.
In the last 9 years, she started a blog where she became much more of a big voice because she was so free to write.
Daphne's blog was everyone's wake-up call. Those who followed her, naturally. Yeah, let's see. So you would, the first...
It's 2 hours.
As soon as you wake up and before you go to sleep, you check what's going on. That's how we got the news from Daphne's blog.
I know why you come here. You don't have to tell me. It's the reason I do it. That this website has over the last 4 years become a gathering post or rallying point for decent people who feel frightened and threatened at the rise, growth and spread of amorality.
To understand the true persona of Daphne and how big she was and how strong as a woman is that you have to understand the misogynistic culture of this country. We're a very small place. If you want a comparison with Italy, you would say you're in the Sicilian heartland or the Sardinian heartland.
They tried to portray her as isolated, and they also, by criticizing her so much, also whether it was physically or what she said or what she did, they tried to denigrate her very much and dehumanize her in many ways. And I think that was also an attempt to isolate her.
Nobody can seek to understand Maltese politics or Maltese society without first understanding amoral familism, which shapes and drives both, and which, it has to be said, has ruined them both too. Malta is in a dangerous place, and now we can no longer say that it is corrupt politicians who have brought it to this point, for it can no longer be denied that those corrupt politicians are a reflection of society.
We had a Dutch anthropologist living here in the 1960s and 70s who came in Malta and lived for a long time to study Maltese society. And he coined this term, amoral familism. Daphne wrote a lot about it. It is this idea that the decision on whether an action is right or wrong is whether that action is going to benefit oneself and one family. There is no morality which is independent of oneself. There is no common good.
She went to Valletta, she went everywhere, and as she said, if they want to get me, they get me. I mean, you know, in Italy, we've got the story of Falcone and Borsellino and other important people. You know, if somebody sets the mind on killing somebody, unfortunately, they'll find a way to do it.
If you look at our language, as the Maltese language, the words against women are much harsher than the words you would use against a man. They sound worse.
In Malta, there used to be a tradition during the periods of the night. It's called the Arcilla. This was a kind of play. Since in the carnival everything was allowed. Last year, for example, I remember one of the personages, in the Arcilla was Daphne.
If you want to call someone a witch in the feminine form, it sounds just much harsher. Now, she was a witch in that people felt that she was touching the core. She was the public conscience. And this is why people hated her. Do you know, this is like somebody tapping on your shoulders all the time. It makes you very nervous.
But then, when they called her the witch, she took that with a pinch of salt as well.
A green hill overlooks the small village of Bitnia, 15 kilometers northwest of Valletta. From that vantage point, the view is unobstructed on the row of trees that protects the discretion of Dar Rihanna, the windy house, inhabited by Daphne Caruana Galizia. The hill is crossed by Victoria Lines, the system of 19th century fortifications built by the British Empire, the Great Wall of Malta. Here, for 3 weeks, aboard a rented car, a man in his 50s spends his days in solitude, passing away time by smoking. His name is Alfred De Giorgio, the Fulu. He is convinced he is alone. However, someone observes him from the windows of the country house. Spouses Charles and Winnie Samut.
In the 3 weeks before the incident, I had noticed a small white car which used to be parked in this area here. Sometimes there was a person in it, many times it was empty, and it used to be parked further down the road, or else sometimes it was parked here. It was down here that they were watching from. You can see very clearly the road, the house, everything.
A lot of people don't know that she was in university doing the course of archaeology. Sometimes when you go on an archaeological dig, it's the tiny things which are the important ones. And I think that's also what was important with her journalistic work. She wasn't happy with the story which was on the top, but she would dig deeper into the story, layer by layer, just like in archaeology.
Daphne loved beauty. Anything beautiful, she loved.
I have been knowing Daphne since 1990, give and take. I was a young designer.
So she set up the Taste and Flair magazine, which is a beautiful testimony to everything that she loved.
As a photographer, I guess Daphne did never like to be photographed. She loved photography as a subject matter.
The way we worked on the magazine is not something that I recommend to anyone who wants to do a magazine.
If anything, she would like to be in the back, behind the camera, controlling.
There was no gray in her character. She was either black or white. So if something was wrong, it was wrong. And there was no way that someone could interpret it as something which is not so bad, you know?
Many of the articles, which were partly research historical articles about the home or certain colors and certain styles, they were actually her personal interests. So she wasn't just making an effort to write about these things because she thought it might have some commercial success. She actually really enjoyed these things very much herself. Her home was full of this.
Walking into Daphne's house was like walking into Aladdin's cave, you know? Because everywhere you look around you, it's color, decorations, paintings, rugs.
I'm just trying to maintain a normal life for my kids so they will not feel that something is going wrong.
The development of the economy in Malta moved from a country dependent on the British services to Malta gaining independence and developing the hospitality sector, tourist sector, and the industry sector, to then move on to the financial services sector, but you don't have the ripple effect in the financial services sector which you have in the gaming sector. The economy is boosted much more in the gaming sector. If, for example, you drive around the harbors, you will see the marinas, you will see a substantial number, you know, next to each other, of boats. Very expensive boats. In the roads, you find very expensive cars. And sometimes you realize that the persons owning the boats and the cars are 25, 26-year-olds. Where do they get all this money from?
The crooks who made it to Daphne, who made it to me, I don't want them to be even more happy because they're making my life miserable. No, they're not making my life miserable. I'm still fine.
With gaming companies, you also have the other aspect, money laundering. And money laundering, it exists in Malta and it exists to a large degree.
In June 2017, the President of the European Parliament, Antonio Tajani, decided to send a mission to Malta to investigate the rule of law in Malta.
An investigative committee, once the PANA scandal broke,
we started to discuss the weakening of Malta's institutions when Daphne was still alive.
and we had highlighted all the problems in Malta already.
In January 2018, the mission that came to Malta presented this report on the results of our investigations.
We have established that they have huge money laundering problems.
There is enough evidence of corruption.
This terrible program of golden visas.
This evidence clearly implicates the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Mr. Keith Kembry, and the Tourism Minister, Mr. Konrad Mizzi, amongst other people involved in all this criminal activity.
There is no independence of the judiciary.
They remain, these two people, in their posts today.
There is no real independence in the police forces.
This is the background also of the assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia.
And what is really worrisome is that the Maltese government only goes around saying we were re-elected.
Criminals in power and weakened institutions that are meant to protect these criminals around the Prime Minister.
It's very hard for us to have trust in the institutions of our country when the people our mother was investigating for extremely serious crimes remain in positions of power with influence over ongoing police investigations.
In February 2016, Daphne Caruana Galizia broke the story that Senior Government Minister Konrad Mizzi and the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Keith Kembry, held secret accounts in Panama.
Daphne did not like cars. She drove a long-term hire car from Perseus Car Hire in Birkirkara, a white Peugeot 108. She had picked it up on June 18, 2017. On September 16, the car had returned from the dealer for a small repair due to a minor crash. One of the two brothers, who owned Perseus, had gone to get it back at Daphne's home and had used the second set of car keys. By mistake, the car keys had been left in a letterbox other than the mechanic's. A trivial mistake that nobody would have noticed until 2:58 p.m. a month later.
On Konrad Mizzi, she also reported he had secret trusts in New Zealand. The two denied any of this. They said it was complete falsehood. A month later, the Panama Papers are published by the ICIJ, and documents in the Panama Papers confirms this story that Daphne Caruana Galizia had broken, and that these people were lying. Absolutely nothing happens to them.
You come here to feel normal in a sea of insanity, where the crowd cheers the Commissioner of Police for failing to take action against a corrupt cabinet minister, where supporters of the party in power celebrate and have their picture taken on the steps of a bank which launders money for Azerbaijan's ruling elite because it is linked to the politicians they support, where even educated people who have had all the advantages in life vote a corrupt political party into power merely because they're renting out flats to buyers of Maltese citizenship who never set foot in them.
Those Panama Papers spoke about three companies, actually. Konrad Mizzi, Keith Kembry, and then another company. that is owned by someone that the papers say is more important than these two, so important that they're going to have to tell them by phone. Until in early 2017, Daphne Caruana Galizia published this story and say, this company, eGrant, belongs to Michel Muscat. When Daphne Caruana Galizia breaks the news about Michel Muscat owning eGrant, she is referring to evidence she says she knows is inside the office of Pilatus Bank. This is the biggest story of Daphne Caruana Galizia.
This inquiry should have been made by the Maltese authorities, but they are doing nothing. Neither an inquiry into this bank and its regularity system, neither starting investigations into what we know. I mean, the wife of the Prime Minister getting money from Azerbaijan, Minister having bank accounts opened by Mossack Fonseca, the Chief of Staff in the same situation, and nothing happens. As Pilatus is a bank operating in Eurozone, having access to the European Central Bank, being able to launder dirty money and getting this money into the European system.
I don't regret what I did.
Pilatus Bank was licensed in Malta a few months after the Labour Party won the election in 2013. It looks like it was set up to service the Azerbaijani regime.
First, it was my husband who went for an interview in Pilatus Bank. Then my husband has suggested that I can send my CV to this bank, so I did. I have been offered the position of executive assistant to the chairman and owner of the bank, Mr. Ali Sadr. Pilatus Bank is not a kind of usual bank.
It has something like 180 accounts. We know that Ilham Aliyev's son and his daughter have accounts there. We know that his emergencies minister has an account there. It's 180 accounts, but billions of euros flow through it. Why? Because Malta is a destination for offshore banking.
I remember one particular transaction. It was a bit over $1 million. It was coming from company Sahra FZCO, which belongs to Miss Leila Aliyeva, daughter of Azerbaijani president, and it was coming from Pilatus account of that company Sahra to bank account of eGrant in Dubai.
The whistleblower who spoke to Daphne Caruana Galizia is a Russian woman, Maria Fimova.
I first contacted Ms. Caruana Galizia around 6 months after my dismissal from the bank, because during those 6 months, many things have happened.
Daphne, for a while, does nothing about it. But then, a few months later, calls her and tells her, I have these documents. Do you think these are genuine? Have you seen anything like this at Pilatus Bank? And Maria Fimova tells her she has.
She contacted me and we have decided to meet in my place, in the apartment I was renting in Malta. So we have discussed eGrant company and the account of this company in Pilatus Bank, because it was related to politically exposed persons in Malta. In declarations of trust for this company, as well in account opening form for this company, Ms. Muscat was mentioned as a sole and ultimate beneficiary.
Others have been there before me, in situations which require far more bravery and moral courage than has been required of me over the years in Malta. Others are there still, in horrendous situations, as they are in Baku, Azerbaijan. What I am put through by the plots, conspiracies and machinations of Joseph Muscat, Keith Schembri, Glenn Bedingfield, Kurt Farrugia, their television station and radio, their internet trolls, and the rest of them, is as nothing compared to the hellish nightmare that those brave people must endure in their far more dangerous battles.
At the end of April 2017, I decided to testify in front of Magistrate Aaron Tujeya, who was leading the inquiry into Igrand. I think it was 28th of April. So 29th of April, Malta Today, the Maltese newspaper, was revealing my identity and trying to defamate me.
This happens on a late afternoon. Obviously, everyone is reading this news. The press go to the actual bank.
Sorry. Intom impjegati ta' Pilatus Bank għal jista' jkun? Sorry?
And find the owner of the bank in the middle of the night, something like 10:30 at night, loaded with 2 bags coming out of the back door. And they try to tell him, what's in those bags? Where are you going? Who are you?
Għanna l-filmat li intom ħirġin mill-uffiċini u intom impjegati Pilatus Bank.
A few minutes after that,
Mela xkontu tagħmlu hawnhekk?
a plane,
Filgħaxija.
empty with no passengers, a private jet, takes off from the airport and flies directly with no passengers to Baku.
Importanti staqsik x'għandek fil-bagalja? M'għandkom l-ebda kummenti tajdu. Xi qegħdin hawnhekk f'tax biex id-disla fil-għaxija bil-filmat ħirġin minn Pilatus Bank bil-bagalji fidejkom u qed tgħidu li m'intomx impjegati ta' Pilatus Bank.
We are watching it on our screens, going there. Few minutes after the plane takes off, the Prime Minister, in the middle of the night, calls the press in again and tells them, you know, this lie, this needs to be settled. I'm going to order a magistrate to start an inquiry. So then, the police, at 8 o'clock the next morning, after the horses have bolted, go in and clamp down on the bank. And the inquiry started. But those bags, they're on the way to Baku.
I have no idea what you're talking about, and you better learn some English to ask some questions, man.
Yes, but your partner here, she spoke in English and Maltese. That's why I spoke in Maltese all the way. If you would have commented earlier that you speak English, maybe I can ask you some questions in English then. Are you a Pilatus Bank employee? What are you doing late at night here in Tashbish with all those baggages with you?
Arrived from the airport.
From where, please? From where?
Daphne has had breakfast with her husband Peter and Matthew, one of her 3 sons. They decide to go to Nashar, to Palazzo Parisio. There is a beautiful interior garden. Daphne leaves alone and reaches Nashar, where she parks the Peugeot at the trade fairground. At 1 p.m. she is back again with husband and son. After lunch, they move on to Giornata Giorna event in Floriana. They arrive with 2 cars, Daphne's Peugeot and Peter's car. They buy seats and plants. One man, named Neville Gaffar, a staff member of the office of the Prime Minister, follows them. He takes some pictures with his smartphone. They are stolen images of Daphne, which he will post later on Facebook. The last picture of her. At 5 p.m., Daphne and Peter are back home. An hour later, Matthew also comes back. He had gone swimming in the sea at the Exiles. He parked the Peugeot outside the gate of the house, which will not open again that evening.
In December 2017, something important has happened. I have testified in front of members of European Parliament who previously had a mission of going to Malta and investigating rule of law.
On the 24th of November 2017, I wrote to the chair of the Supervisory Board of the European Central Bank to ask them to assess the situation of Pilatus Bank in Malta, but also to assess how the license was granted to this bank.
So I filed a claim against the bank for unpaid wages, and bank filed a claim against me for fraud. Under this claim, I have been arrested.
I concluded the letter sent to the chairman of the Supervisory Board by stating that I therefore call on you in the strongest possible terms to exercise the powers vested in you under Regulation 1024/2013 and assume direct supervision of Pilatus Bank, and based on the evidence available to you, proceed to suspend and withdraw its authorization to operate.
My documents have been taken from me. Then my mother passed away, but I wasn't allowed to go to her funeral. All those events caused me frustration, and I decided that I have to do something with that bank.
Few months after the Labour Party came to power in 2013, they announced a scheme where someone can sign a check for the government for €650,000 and get a Maltese passport. Doesn't matter who they are. They will pass a due diligence process, but if they pay, they get the passport.
We know that they have a program of golden visa, like some other countries, unfortunately, but there is a speciality in Malta. They are accepting people close to Putin without really scrutiny from where their money comes from.
What was even more shocking, that the government granted an exclusive contract to a company, Henley and Partners, in order to be the agents of the passports for Malta, and they make a big chunk of this sale, and the rest goes to Malta.
It's very serious because this is an open door for criminality, for criminals getting European citizenship.
The government is complicit in institutional fraud. It is aware that these people do not really live here and gives them passports just because it's collecting the money. It is collecting the money, and Henley and Partners that is making big money from this.
Malta is a full member of the European Union, and they have a socialist government, and what is really very unfortunate is that the Socialist Party here in the Parliament are protecting the Maltese government because they are socialist.
After the elections, I felt like it's not safe anymore to stay in Malta. That feeling had even grown when some people back in Russia came to my father's house. They introduced themselves as private detectives. I tracked who ordered those private detectives to come to my father's house, and I found out that it was one political person from Malta.
Somehow, Daphne Galizia came in possession of private emails, not using the government email account, between the Prime Minister of Malta, Joseph Muscat, and his assistant, Keith Cambry, and Christian Kalen from Henley and Partners, where they together agreed to slap down Daphne Caruana Galizia with ruinous international lawsuits.
We shall miss the point, as we generally do, that it is people who vote for political parties, and not political parties which put themselves into power. Would Muscat's party have been returned to power in any other European Union member state? That is the question we have got to address.
In January 2017, Daphne Caruana Galizia publishes a story on her blog, and she says, right now, as you're reading this, our economy minister, Chris Cardona, is in a brothel in Germany, in Felbert, a highway brothel where he was with his secretary. He was in Germany because he was meant to be on official European Union duty, but she alleges he was entertaining himself otherwise in his free time. Chris Cardona the next morning woke up guns blazing. denying. Him and his secretary flew into Malta, went to court, and not only filed for libel, but they did something that was in our law but was never used. They asked the court to freeze her bank accounts while the 4 libel suits they filed would be heard.
We met in my house and I was telling that she should be very careful because I saw a car bomb in the light of a day with my own eyes. And I told her, you should be aware. And she told me, okay, what can they do to me? Will they put a bomb in my car as well? The only thing I regret, and I'm kind of blaming myself, that I didn't insist that Daphne will be more careful, because I was very aware that she's in danger. I was worrying a lot, but we didn't know each other well, and why would she listen to me? But I should have insisted, I guess.
It is decided. The day has come. The man on the hill reaches the valley and stops in front of the gate of Caruana Galizia's house. He opens the driver's door with an electronic device without leaving a trace. He places the explosive under the driving seat, along with a GSM module device card that will receive the remote pulse for priming. He closes the car. He returns to his hill. He lights up yet another cigarette.
The police came. They found the cigarette down here, behind the stone.
The Giorgio leaves Grand Harbor at the helm of Maya, a semi-cabin boat. He has at least 2 mobile phones with him. Maya directs the bow north towards Pembroke, then south towards Rinella.
On the day of the incident, it was parked here. We saw it at 9 o'clock in the morning, we saw it at 12 o'clock, and it was still there at 2:30, which is half an hour before the incident. After that time, we never saw it again.
People remember where they were when they heard that Daphne was killed.
On October 16, I was at my desk at home, as usual, working on something.
I was at university, I was giving a lecture, and I had a lot of messages coming in on my phone, but couldn't actually look at those messages.
Daphne has worked all morning next to Matthew in the house. She posts her latest article on her blog. It reads,
"There are crooks everywhere. The situation is desperate."
And I got a phone call from a friend of mine.
The day of the assassination, I was at my desk at work, and one of my colleagues shouted it out, and I just absolutely couldn't believe it.
And she told me, "Did you hear what happened?"
The first thing we were told was that there was a bomb, a car bomb in Bidnia. And the minute I saw Bidnia, I knew.
The Maya semi-cabin boat is on the open sea, opposite the siege bell of Fort Sant'Elmo.
She told me, "I'm trying to call Daphne, but she's not answering." And I said, that's not the first time, you know, I mean, maybe she's in a meeting or something.
Daphne leaves home to go to the HSBC bank branch where she can deposit a checkbook made out by her husband Peter to manage the block of accounts imposed by virtue of a lawsuit filed by the Minister of Economy, Chris Cardona.
I was at the office at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Someone called me and he said, I think they got Daphne.
I got a call from somebody in England
asking me if I had heard of any car bomb in the area of Bidnia.
Giorgio De Giorgio's mobile phone received a call lasting a few seconds, telling him that the person condemned to die has left the house.
But then straight after, I was receiving phone calls from The Independent, from the newspaper itself.
Of course, I had not heard anything and I shrugged it off. I told him, this must be one of those fake news.
and she said, "Is it true they killed her?"
And I was in shock like everyone else.
Daphne has forgotten the checkbook. She goes back and then leaves home again.
The way I gave therapy for myself was I started writing.
A second call rings on one of Giorgio De Giorgio's two mobile phones. This time, Daphne is in the car.
And I was churning out blog posts, and I found myself becoming a journalist.
That is the house over there. And the car was parked, there is another car parked there today. You can see it facing that way. You can see it clearly with your naked eye. You don't need binoculars.
I was in the Libe committee. We were discussing how to fight money laundering by criminal law.
When she came out, she would have driven along the small road over there. To join the main road.
When my assistant Coralie Guillaume went up to the desk where I was sitting.
And she would be coming down like where that white car is coming now.
With her smartphone showing me the alert on the assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia.
Giorgio De Giorgio sends the text message that triggers the bomb.
I didn't have the courage to call her on her number. And I sent a message to Matthew, and I told him, Matthew, please tell me that mommy is okay because I'm receiving a lot of messages.
Matthew hears the explosion. He leaves the house running. He sees his mother's Peugeot billowing, thick white smoke.
And incredibly enough, I don't think that 10 minutes passed, he replied.
Giorgio De Giorgio heads towards Grand Harbor. He sends a text message to his partner. It reads, "Buy 2 bottles of wine, my love."
He told me, I'm sorry, Ramon. He said, Mommy is gone. And at that point in time, I mean, even now, I feel it was terrible.
There is something else I should say before I go. When people taunt you or criticize you for being negative or for failing to go with their flow, for not adopting an attitude of benign tolerance to their excesses, Bear in mind always that they, and not you, are the ones who are in the wrong.
I received a phone call from a police inspector telling me that, and I remember his voice, he was crying. They killed her. Dot. They killed her. And I froze. I grabbed my things, I rushed out of house. On the way, I must admit I wasn't able to drive properly. I was shaking.
Is a list, a substantial list of people who now are living better because she's dead, who now have less to worry about because she's dead. That doesn't prove they killed her, but they benefited from it.
Dear Daphne, first of all, I must say I admire you. I admire your whole life, your family, your beautiful boys, your work as a journalist, what you leave behind. And I want to tell you that we will not forget you. We will not forget what you tried to tell the public opinion. We are setting up here in the European Parliament with the Greens a prize that will carry your name. It is called the Daphne Caruana Galizia Prize for Journalists. So you will be remembered for everything you did, and we will take care of your memory.